Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Thursday, the 29th of November, comes to you from London. And we're here at the European opening this morning, just looking at the markets and very strong performances in the US last night. But we see the dollar just falling away quite sharply at the end of the day yesterday, and that's just put us into short-term bearish territory, just hanging on to support on the point and figure chart, hitting some resistance on the medium and long-term charts on the point and figure side, but really starting to look more and more bullish on the medium and long-term charts. So just hitting some long-term resistance is causing that short-term sell-off. And if we look at the euro, we see euros looking bullish this morning against that weaker dollar, so euro dollar looking stronger. Japanese yen is also looking stronger against the dollar, so dollar falling away here, not quite bearish, and sterling actually falling against a weaker dollar, so might be making a transition, but on the short-term chart, and we have got these downside targets hanging over us, and medium and long-term, the picture still isn't great for sterling, and we're looking lower this morning against the euro and against the Swiss franc as well. So sterling still really struggling with the Brexit uncertainty, and against the Aussie dollar lower still. Bitcoin down 0.3%. It's actually recovering on the short-term chart, but no clear targets to the upside really, and the medium and long-term picture is still very bearish. As we mentioned, US markets looking much stronger after big rises yesterday. The Nasdaq was up over, the S&P was up over 2%, and we're seeing really strong bounce there on the long-term support level on the cloud. So interesting that we're seeing that a little bit of a shortage of upside targets there on the short-term chart. So it's very hard to call which way we're going to go. The Nasdaq also looking strong and now back above the cloud, and the Dow also just pushing higher. They're not quite as bullish, and the Russell 2000 we're seeing much the same picture. The futures this morning down very slightly on the S&P future, and the Nasdaq future, we're also seeing the E-mini is looking weaker this morning, having jumped yesterday. So market's probably just going to give up some of the gains we saw yesterday, but we shouldn't be too surprised there. The FTSE 100 is up 0.5% this morning, so looking stronger here, and the 250 up 0.3%, so looking stronger there as well. The DAX is up just under was 2/3%, and again looking stronger, and the CAC Quarante also looking stronger, although that long-term chart is still quite a worry there. Japan was up overnight about 1/3%. The Hang Seng was down just under 1%, and China continues to worry, down 1.3%. India up 1%, and the Australian market recovering a little bit, up 0.5%. Looking at crude oil, we saw yesterday just still bearish below the cloud there, and WTI up 0.5% this morning, so we're seeing that as well. Looking at US nat gas, we're sitting steady at $4.61, so another big jump yesterday puts us back in that high fours, and we're really seeing this volatility is quite incredible on Henry Hub, but we're holding on to these levels, so looking very strong indeed. Gold sitting at 12.26, back to bullish territory on that weaker dollar, so bullish short term. Silver similar, and US 10-year yields just sinking lower to 3.02%. Big question is, can they hold on to that 3% level? Sentiment for a rise in rates starting to fade. Looking at the markets, this is coming to you from Yahoo. Looking at the world indices, first of all, we see big rises in the US overnight. The Nasdaq was actually up over 3% on the 100 index, and the composite up 2.95%. We see against the Dow Jones index, the Nasdaq has really underperformed the last few months, so that's quite key. Looking at the 100, we did have some very big performances. Google up 3.75%, Apple up 3.85%. None of these rises really significant enough to change the trend. These are very big counter trend moves, but we are still in bearish territory on a lot of these stocks. Amazon up 6%, but again, in medium-term bearish territory. And if we look at Other stocks, Microsoft up 3.7%, looking stronger on the chart here, medium term, and still bullish. Netflix up 6%, and so that was quite a big rise as well. And Tesla was actually only up 1%, but actually holding on to its bullish position. So the interesting thing is the stocks where the charts are looking good didn't rise as much. The stocks where the charts are worrying rose a lot. So that's a sign stocks being re-rated that have been heavily sold. Looking at the Aussie market, we saw Ultram Limited up 8%, and if we look on the other side, we had Aristocrat Leisure down a massive 25% in the Aussie market, so really big moves there. Down 5%, so that was quite a big move. And if we look at Main Pharma, we see here also big moves to the downside. So again, a lot of stocks still looking pretty bearish on that downside potential. So really key there. Main Pharma down 8%. Taking a look at China, we saw quite a big sell-off on the index, but interesting, quite a lot of stocks actually up there. And if we look at the composite, we saw it was still down 1%. So interesting that the handful of stocks that were up a small amount, but we had big falls on some of these other stocks. So Greenland Holdings, for example, down 4%. Looking at the Hang Seng, much the same picture, a mixed bag, quite a lot of stocks up, but the stocks that were down very heavily. Sino Biopharmaceutical down 4%. In India, we saw the Nifty, quite a mixed picture here as well. And then on the S&P 225, we saw also quite a lot of moves there. Japan being up. Taking a look at Europe at the opening, we see the FTSE 100. Quite a lot of stocks to the upside here. So Melrose up 3.9%. They've had a big fall of late, so interesting that we're seeing that recovery there. And Persimmon Group we see here was down very heavily yesterday. Taylor Wimpey also were down quite a lot. The FTSE 250, very mixed picture indeed. We see here we've got quite a lot of rises and fallers, and the Euro stocks, much the same picture. Quite a lot rising on that US rise. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.